People are protesting you all, folks that are wearing the badge and doing the job. And the call to action in a lot of those protests is to defund the police, right? How do you react to that? Weeks ago, as the nation watched George Floyd lose his life at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer, wounds that never seemed to heal were once again reopened in this country. And in that moment, I decided I wanted to get a group of cops from around the country together on a video call to confront the issues and the problems that have long since plagued American law enforcement. I didn't want to provide a forum for carefully constructed and reviewed statements from spokespeople at City Hall. I wanted to hear an authentic, unfiltered conversation between cops from diverse backgrounds, dissecting the actions of not only those officers in Minneapolis, but the systemic issues within their profession, which have given rise to widespread outrage and protests on American streets, including people calling for the defunding of the police. This is part one of that conversation. I'm really excited to be with you guys here. Thank you for being so generous with your time on a Saturday.
No problems.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. And Joe Dutton, why don't we start with you?
Okay, I had 31 years. I am now retired. I work for a city called Golden Valley, which is an inner suburb of Minneapolis. I'm a use of force expert. I testified in court in reference to that.
Yeah, so I was the police officer for 6.5 years for the Tucson Police Department. I was a spokesperson of the police department. I was a field training officer. I did just about everything. And I left the police department in 2017. As a police officer, I was actually in the process of promoting a sergeant.
Yeah, I'm Aaron Cho. I've been on the job 20 years in February. I've been a sergeant for 3.5 years in Los Angeles County. And my specialty is as a public information officer, patrol sergeant, and public relations expert.
So I just retired in March from the Dayton Police Department in Ohio. I was there for 21 years and 5 years in the U.S. Army before that. In April, I assumed the position of Director of Research and Procedural Justice for the Charleston Police Department here in Charleston, South Carolina, where my primary responsibility is to implement the findings of a huge racial bias audit that the city of Charleston conducted over the last couple of years.
I was a sheriff's deputy for the Charles County Sheriff's Office for approximately 7 years. I was in K-9 for my last few years there. I love that job. That's probably the best job in police work. And then just recently, I accepted a job at one of DC's smaller departments.
Been in the gang 8 years, sergeant, SWAT team member, FTO, pretty much working in one of the most dangerous cities in Ohio and done it all in these 8 years, seriously, not even an exaggeration.
I've been in policing and law enforcement in general for over 20 years. Started out my career in policing with the New York City Police Department. Worked in all the major investigation bureaus within the NYPD, from the Detective Bureau, Internal Affairs, the Narcotics Division. I was the deputy chief for the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. Currently, I'm the first deputy commissioner of the Westchester County Department of Corrections. And my views today represent my own personal views as a professional law enforcement expert and not the views of my department.
I'm a detective, 16 years on the job. I was patrol for 10 years, detective now. Chicago, and we're north suburb called Zion, north suburb of Chicago. Very, very busy city. I was on SWAT, FTO back in the day, but now I run a outreach program.
It's great. I appreciate all of you guys being here. And I think the question I really want to throw out to the group first is, what is it like to be a police officer in America right now?
I'll go first. I know my first instance of when things changed was probably going from Trayvon to the Michael Brown incident. The Trayvon issue didn't really kind of affect us because I was a citizen. But, you know, when the Michael Brown incident happened, it seemed like people just kind of like switched on a dime. You know, you just felt like, man, I'm out here doing everything I can. And, you know, these people just turned on me for something I had nothing to do with. And it felt like I was being blamed for something that was going on in a whole other country.
Yeah, you know, it's like a big circle. You start and the public loves you. Like Byron was saying, they pay for your coffee or they'll do this or do that. And then a critical incident happens or something negative. No matter where it happens in the nation, it affects everybody in the nation. And I can remember having to evolve through that at least, seriously, about 5 or 6 times.
I can tell you what I think that what it appears to be is that policing in the negative sense is on steroids now compared to when I left in 2017. So I really hate to see the state of policing in America, because I believe that the police job, the police career, the calling is such an honorable thing. And it's one of the most integral careers to ever exist in America. Most police officers are doing the right thing. Most police agencies are holding people accountable. We have the knuckleheads out there, like you would have in any profession, that make us look bad. But it's sad to see such an honorable profession be treated this way in America.
Let's be really honest, like law enforcement in general has always been this way. Technology has advanced to a point where now we capture it. What we're seeing right now has been going on for decades. This ain't nothing new. You get what I'm saying? It's just now it's in the limelight. I didn't work with cops that's been racist. You know what I'm saying? I didn't work with cops that's been, sexist. You feel me? Like, this ain't something that's new. I'm not gonna say that I agree with the terms in which it has come out into the public, but I am happy that there is some light being shined, because it's no more hearsay, saying, hey man, the police took me around the corner and beat my ass. And that's all you got to go off of is your word. You get what I'm saying? Imagine if body cameras never got implemented. It's a different curse. You get what I'm saying? It's helped me. You get what I'm saying? More so than it's harmed me. But when I first got introduced to a body camera, I was kind of like, I ain't really want it though, for real. But I had to learn to work with it. You get what I'm saying? But that's just my take on it,
I hear what you're saying, David, but do you think it's unique to police, or is it a people problem? Because if you're a racist cop, it means you're a racist person. If you've got prejudices, you carry those into the job, and sure, the job magnifies you. If you're a womanizer, the job amplifies that. If you're an idiot, the job amplifies that. I just don't see it being unique to law enforcement. I think law enforcement, and I've been in many professions. I teach at a very conservative Baptist university as well, and they go through a lengthy background process because you're working with students. But that still doesn't come close to what we go through as law enforcement officers. We go through a background process where they talk to everybody, including exes who don't have anything favorable to say about you. So When we get into this job, I think they do a pretty good job weeding out the bad people, but no process is perfect. For as long as there's for as long as there's somebody that wants this job, they're going to say the right thing. It's what happens after the fact. And I think if we look at the 99.5% of officers that do a good job every day, and you look at that very, very small minority of officers that do stupid things, I can't say that that's unique to police work. And it sounds like you're saying that we're bringing this to light. I think it's just human nature. As long as
I'm being honest with you, you know what I'm saying? I can only speak from experience. Guess what I'm saying? So for you, your experiences are different, so you have a different outlook. For me, my experiences are different, so I'm gonna have a different outlook. I'm not saying you're wrong, so I'm not wrong either. I can only go by what I've experienced.
No, I'm just trying to get clarification as to what you're saying. I mean, my
So
entire career was in Los Angeles County. I started in '99 when there was hardly any Asian officers. So believe me, I understand that there is a little bit of conflict when it comes to different races and stuff. I've been there. I grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I've been through it all. But it's not unique to police. I didn't experience racism as soon as I became a police officer. It happened my entire life.
If I can jump in, I think it's so. As far as growing up, Black, we already have a different view of policing, because what a lot of people don't realize, and especially to some of my my white colleagues, is that and Joe, you're like my father's age. Segregation was just not that long ago. During my dad went to a segregated school. He's still walking around today. He's 70 years old. That wasn't that long ago. And during that time, police were used as the arm of a lot of segregationist policies. So we are taught in a lot of households in the Black community that cops are bad. Cops are bad. They're going to do this, whether it's warranted or not. So that's kind of like PTSD passed from our parents, our parents to us, that a cop, if he gets a hold of you, if he stops you, if he can do it and get away with it, he's going to do something bad to you. So that's kind of ingrained in a lot of us, valid or not, so that's one of the things that we're dealing with, so that's
jump in here really quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this question to the group. By show of hands, who here feels that there were bad apples in the policing agency that they work in?
That there were?
Yeah.
Where or what or is?
Right.
Were.
Oh, okay.
I'm retired, David.
Yeah.
A while ago.
If there were, right, do those bad apples need to be plucked, or is there a deeper problem at the root of the tree?
Nowadays, they do get plucked, and I think a lot of people. One of the misconceptions you see a lot online from a lot of these people, and they go, "Well, the good officers are bad officers because they don't say anything about the bad officers. That means they're the same." And what I think people don't realize is officers get fired all the time nowadays. Louis, you might not, NYPD, I watched the documentary. They had a lot of problems about guys, squashing whistleblowers, when they would see things. And, that kind of disturbed me. A lot of departments I see around here, though, is if you do something somebody sees, they're going to tell. And you're probably going to get fired, but it's not going to get broadcast unless you do something egregious, like get into some type of organized crime or shoot somebody or do something like that. So people get fired all the time, and people tell them bad apples all the time. So it's not, it's not as rampant as you think it is.
Yeah.
But I also think it's the effect, right? So you look at, like in 2006 in Buffalo, you had a female African-American female officer try to stop and intervene on a white police officer having a suspect in a chokehold. And the response by the police department was to fire her. And now today in Minneapolis, we're saying that those officers' failure to intervene extends to them criminal culpability. So I think when we, like Byron had said, when we respond in a way where we terminate or retaliate against officers that come forward to stop criminal activity or serious misconduct, then that sends a message throughout the department. In the same way, when you have officers that, because of their family members or people that they know, I've known officers that have driven drunk and gotten fired. And I've known officers in the same department that have been arrested 3 times for driving drunk, and they went on to have a beautiful career. So the consequences are not the same, right? There's significant disparities in how predominantly minority cops are disciplined when they make mistakes or when they are whistleblowers. And there's a huge difference between their white counterparts and how they're disciplined. And they're coddled through the system. My position is simple. If you're a cop and you drive drunk, I think you should be fired. But either we fire them all or we send them all to treatment. Let's not only fire people that look like us and then send all the white people that drive drunk to treatment.
Well, I want to jump on this. Back in 2011, when I started the police department, it was a big thing on our department that if you mess up, they're going to throw you under the bus and back over you, because you're not going to be a liability on the police department. They'll let you go. Especially when the rookie cops that weren't on probation, you're fired. You can't make any mistakes. So our police department was very strict. When I was a PIO, we fired plenty of people. If you commit a crime, you're done. Black officers and white officers and Hispanic officers were exactly the same. You mess up, you're going to make the department look bad. They're going to be forward thinking. They're going to fire you before it ever hit the news.
Unfortunately, that's not everywhere, though.
Yeah, that's a very unique situation.
I was just about to say.
I'm not saying it's everywhere. I'm just saying.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, though. It's not.
Brandon, and I like that you say certain aspects, but brother, please admit that what is being said is factual, bro.
I'm not denying that. Not one time have I denied it. I said on my department.
And I get that. You had a great department, bro. It was wonderful. You get what I'm saying? They did everything right.
Most departments I know were very similar to ours.
It's a lot of us, bro, that are in departments, and we see a lot of things swept under the rug, man. A lot. And we always say, me and specific other people will be like, damn, if that was me, brother, they'd have kicked my ass up out of here. Like, I done seen it. And I can, once again, we all are only speaking because of our experiences. The thing about me with my third eye, I realized that I also can't be ignorant that other things do go on outside of my department. You get what I'm saying? Like,
that's why it's important to have this panel here. Right. I'm glad we're not all regional. I'm glad we're from different parts of the country, because I can relate to what Brandon's saying. I've been to Georgia. I've been to Smyrna, and I was surprised to find out that they can't unionize in Georgia. Their attorney general outlawed unions out there. But agencies and states where police unions do exist, I believe the unions out there for the betterment of the officer, not just work conditions, but to make sure that their professional career thrives and survives.
City and local officials have held up police unions, though, as being an impediment to being able to pursue criminal charges, prosecution, or even remove, some of these bad apples. Is that a fair characterization?
No. And I say this, the union keeps, you are one person as an officer against a government agency. How are you going to fight them? Have unions made mistakes and believed some bad apples and tried to take care of the wrong people? Absolutely. As many cops are in the country, it's going to happen.
Well,
Yeah,
how many of those officers that are reinstated, they're not reinstated by unions. Most of the time they're reinstated by courts. And
Yes.
so there's sometimes issues where police departments or cities are extremely sloppy in how they discipline or terminate officers. Not that the union is malicious in protecting those officers, but maybe the unions are holding the employer to a standard where that termination or discipline should meet a standard that it's not overturned in court.
I was going to just say that I was a union steward, and Wendy kind of hit it right, that there's a lot more to it than just unions trying to keep bad apples on police departments. Because I can guarantee you, I had no problem if they fired somebody, because more than likely, they deserve to be fired. Now, I don't know what it's like in all your states and how you guys do things, because I'm sure it's different. But in Minnesota, the county attorney brings the charges. The union has nothing to do with it. The union, like you just said, is a civil group. The criminal cases are brought by the county attorney's office, so they have nothing to do with it. I mean, if the county attorney is going to make a charge on an officer, like they are in this case, the union has nothing to do with it. They make the charge and let's go.
Let me ask you all this, because unfortunately, when these situations happen and these bad actors start to taint relationships with different communities in this country, mainly the Black community or certain Latino communities of color largely, why is it then that, like the officer who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, who had something like 18 complaints against him, how are we not able to sort of sift through those individuals and remove them from situations where that can take place? And also, what do you think that has done to law enforcement's relationship with communities of color, mainly the Black community in America?
Well, I think that it's hard with you. I think it's like in our department, anybody that makes a complaint against you, it will be reviewed, no matter who it is, no matter what it is. I think that that's necessary. But what happens is you can have an officer that people just don't like how he acts, but that don't mean he's doing anything criminal, may get a lot of complaints against him that are not sustainable. So if you can't weed out the BS complaints, then you can't really get to the groundwork of some stuff, because there are officers who have legit complaints and they need to be fired. But if you just let people just say whatever, man, they can just not like an officer and forever they'll have these complaints. Now, as far as the Black community after George Floyd, I do not think that it should be this way. I do not think that that George Floyd situation should tear up the Black community and their relationship with police. I don't think that should be the case. The media is pushing it. Activists are pushing it. Politicians are pushing something that is conjuring up a hatred for police when it shouldn't be that case.
Wendy,
I agree with what Brandon
Wendy.
I agree with Brandon. I think a lot of the racial tension is media driven. I think there's a lot of people that are taking up this cause willy-nilly. They're not really doing the research to see that these are really minority cases. These are small cases that make the news. You don't see the good stuff that happens. Officers do amazing things every day. They rescue people. They take care of families that are displaced, but you don't see that because it's not sexy. And the news, unfortunately, became a business. And they've got to sell what sells.
And I also think you have to take into consideration the length of a person's career, right? So the officer in Minneapolis, the former officer Shaven, I think he had about 18 years on the job and he had about 18 complaints, right? So, you're dealing with the public all the time. If they're unsubstantiated and you're averaging 1 or 2 complaints a year, then you might not have a pattern of issues that need to be addressed. Now, if you get 10 complaints in 3 months, there may be something going on with the officer that needs to be addressed.
And Lee, it's sometimes it's hard. You can work with people every day, and you can think a person. It's like when you find out your next door neighbor was a cannibal or something. Mm-hmm. You're like, man, I talk to this guy every day. I never thought, he'd be eating people. Same thing with a guy on your shift. You just can't predict some people that are going to do just horrendous things.
You want to put a pin in that, Wendy? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're talking about systemic problems, but we're not typically dealing with them in a systemic way. And so a buddy of mine in Minneapolis told me that that entire division that Chauvin worked in was toxic. And, if that's the case, this guy was also a training officer. My buddy recommended that they actually apply this contact tracing idea to bad cops. Why aren't we going back and looking at every cop that he trained, every person that he influenced, and assess the situation and see if we can maybe unwind some of the damage that has been done?
Why do we never check that type of behavior right from the outset? Why is that like almost accepted that the good word that she uses is toxic, like that I hate people type of mentality, like that is ingrained so much and accepted in our culture of policing. I don't understand it. I never got it. Why is that not checked? We got body cameras. I can check what you do every day. Are you treating people?
Let me touch on that real quick.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
We all know about the thin blue line. We all know about how if you pull over another cop silently, you shouldn't give another cop a ticket. Some of us may have it in a state where state patrol don't care who they ticket everybody. And how city cops, sheriffs, and state patrol have beef with each other. We beef with each other in some aspects. But let's talk about the interior aspect of being a police officer coming in as a rookie. Remember, as a rookie, you come in, you're taught that you don't have a voice. When Brass walks in the room, you walk out. You kind of lightweight treated as if you're nothing. And it's not for everybody. Everybody's training was different. You know what I'm saying? I'm just talking, but most people that I've talked to throughout years in different agencies have similar stories. Then you also told to not telling your brother, even if you see certain things, going back to what you said, Matt, why isn't it investigated? Why isn't a body camera looked at on a regular day basis? But if you're doing 12-hour shifts and let's take a place like Minneapolis, like they may have these split into zones and areas, whatever the case may be, and they got 12-hour shifts, so they got 2 platoons every day and maybe a total of 4 or 5 or 6 platoons each week. With that being said, you would have to appoint somebody to watch everyone's body cam that's on duty.
But they do, David. Most agencies have. No, what I'm saying is, if you have, and I say most agencies, if you have a body camera, in-car camera, what even most patrol officers don't realize, supervisors, you guys know, they have a thing that's called a trail audit, which they will look at your camera footage, and it's not always from calls. They'll pick random footage of your camera, in-car camera, body camera, just to see what you're doing. And a lot of dudes do get caught up on speaking bad to citizens and stuff like that on trail audits, not just investigations, just random. Those guys in Wilmington that were threatening to kill all those people, they got caught on a trail audit. They weren't even looking for anything. They were just randomly viewing trail audits, and they caught these guys talking about committing crimes.
And the only reason I'm saying this is because every district, every city is not privy to that, bro. You get what I'm saying? Wilmington.
I definitely get what you're saying. I definitely get what you're saying.
They just happen to have that type of equipment to be able to do what they did. But everyone don't have those type of resources nor the manpower to do so.
Oh, I get it. That's,
but I think you can directly look at that. Like, we all know who's always into it with people on the street. Like it's simple. Why is that accepted? I know who's an a-hole all the time. So look at the root of that.
And I'm gonna say this to you, Matt, because I'm gonna be a realist about it. So most of those asshole cops, they got longevity, bro. They got a good line of seniority and they got good relationships with people that sit in high places. So unfortunately, a lot of these people that's in high places, they be like, yo, that's my friend, that's my bro. I really don't want to, I know how he is and I talk to him from time to time, but I don't want to really throw the hammer down on him. You get what I'm saying? There's some
I see it all the time. I agree.
You get what I'm saying? There's some officers that do protect their
and the sad thing is there's no policy against being an a-hole, unfortunately. That's the problem.
How do you put a policy in place? This is part of our job being an ambassador.
How do you get to that point?
We actually do have a charge for that, Matt, that I've seen used, but only when they really, really, really want to get rid of somebody. And every department has it, and it's conduct of becoming a police officer. Mm-hmm. And if you want to talk about people's bad attitudes, because I work with guys who, if you went on a call with them, there was a guarantee that somebody was going to get locked up for disorderly. Nobody likes, we all agree, everybody here, nobody likes working with those people. Because on days that you like, man, I want to do my 10 hours and chill, and it's close to going home, and you got to run a call and he's your partner, you're like, Jesus wept, man. I know we're going to end up at the jail because of this guy. And the supervisors know it. They know it. But they're like, well, what can we really do? He's not doing anything wrong. You know, okay, if you really want to be serious, y'all are charged conduct unbecoming. If y'all want to fire somebody for something minor, get rid of this guy. Get rid of him because he's a problem.
I think we should find a way to do that, because we've complained on police officers and nothing is done. And how do we put a system in place to get rid of officers who are unbecoming? Not just they have to kill somebody first, but
absolutely.
What I wanted to ask next is, across the country, right? We've been seeing protests in cities all over America, and the call to action in a lot of those protests is to defund the police, right? Or abolishing police departments in certain scenarios. People are protesting you all, folks that are wearing the badge and doing the job. How do you react to that?
I think it's incredibly disrespectful and it's ignorant to perpetuate the idea of defunding the police. I think that the origin of the concept of defunding the police came from a very bad area. It didn't come from justice, it came from revenge. And they want to give a big FU to the police department, because a lot of these cities aren't just saying defund the police, they want to abolish the police in general. I think that there's a conversation to be had. If you want to improve police, let's sit down and have an honest conversation and say, look, maybe these cops need better training. You know, in my police department, I mean, we had we were the most dangerous city in the state. While I was in FTO, we had high-speed chases. A homicide was my first day on the job. I mean, you got shootings, murder every day. And so I had a tremendous amount of exposure to use of force and all of the above. But some agencies don't have that. And so they have their first shooting, and now everybody's panicking, and everybody got tunnel vision, and they shooting people they shouldn't. You know, they got their finger on the trigger, sympathetic reflex. You have all of these training issues that we see. So if people really wanted to be honest, you want to help the police department and you actually care, then bridge the gap. Do a ride-along. Learn about law enforcement. Give them the financial support they need. Understand that there's bad cops. Let's facilitate getting them out of the profession. But when you say you want to defund the police and you have no recourse or no alternative, I mean, it's in my personal opinion, it's shameful.
I think we need to defund the police. I think the expansion of responsibilities that has been placed on police departments to solve societal issues has caused part of that funding stream to significantly expand, right? We have concentrated a lot of funding within the police department and taking that funding away from things like the Department of Education, the Department of Social Services, to deal with things like housing insecurity. And that really is not the core responsibility of the police department. So yes, I agree. We still need some form of a public safety apparatus in our communities, because, we do have some bad people out there in the world, and we need to protect our citizenry from that. But that being said, we're at a historic moment due to the multi-ethnic and sustainable protests, where we can have a serious conversation about redefining what the role we want our police departments and public safety departments to play in our communities.
So, Wendy, I want to go to you after this, but I'd like to ask a question to the group. By show of hands, who here thinks we ask too much of the police? Almost everyone. Wendy, I'd love to get your thoughts. And then Aram and David, sorry, I want to hear why you guys didn't raise your hands.
So first of all, on the issues we're dealing with right now, I'm here in South Carolina, where one of the reasons I came down here to work is because this city and the state has recognized that there are some deep systemic issues that need to change. And all of that started with the Mother Emanuel shooting, where 9 people were tragically killed while they were sitting in church. And following that, both the city and the state embarked on a journey that led to this racial bias audit and a recognition that, we need to make change. And I think part of the problem we're dealing with is that people sometimes don't see the difference between having a problem with police brutality and having a problem with police officers. These are deeply rooted systemic issues that exist across all of our institutions, and we're not going to fix policing by just fixing policing. So I think, that leads, when we talk about dumping all of these extraneous problems on the cops, Chief Brown said it after the Dallas massacre, that, every single problem that doesn't have a separately funded 24-hour service is sent to the police. And we've been asked to increasingly handle mental health issues and other things without the tools or equipment to do them. And so if you start looking at what's happening already across the United States, police departments are independently creating their own models to address these problems with multidisciplinary systems. So that we're not just sending a man with a gun to handle every problem. It may be a police officer paired with an actual crisis worker or a mental health expert. And this is a huge, huge opportunity to make those changes and transform what we're doing to make it more effective.
David, Aram, you guys didn't raise your hand. You don't feel that we ask too much from, police officers nowadays. Why is that? David, let's start with you.
To be honest with you, the reason why I raised my hand is growing up in the slums, never having nothing. Each one of us in this panel got a story to tell. But the one thing that I've learned is that there are a lot of things that you just can't learn through training. There's a lot of things that you can't learn in a classroom. How hard is it for you to just have some compassion, for you to have some form of empathy? I don't even think most police know that your number one most important weapon, whatever you want to call it, ain't nothing on your duty belt. Is this, and this, and this. You know how many cops I've been around that don't even know how to use all three, let alone one? The thing is this. I agree with what Wendy stated about having an expert go on scene to a call, but you can't ask too much from the police. You get what I'm saying? It really depends on the community. It depends on the situation. Now, if you are outmanned, for instance, let's say the department that I was working in, we were very understaffed. All right, very, very poor community. Taxes was very low. I was making $16.76 an hour. You know what I'm saying? I was seeing $800 checks every 2 weeks, but I was dealing with every form of crime imaginable. I didn't complain. I got it done with minimal resources. So I feel like as a police officer, as EMS, as fire, whatever the case may be, any type of public servant, I don't think the calling can never really be just too much, or you could be overwhelmed. You get what I'm saying? I can understand that some things you may not be properly prepared for, but it doesn't mean that you can't get some form of experience by doing it.
I just want to jump in here real quick and say this. I agree with you, but the problem is they're holding police officers accountable, although they're not giving them adequate amount of training. And that's, I think, where the problem lies. When I was on the police department, when you have a loose dog in the community, they call the police department. We have animal control, but we get there faster. Mental health. We had a mental health crisis unit where cops would dress in plain clothes and go out and talk to people in the community. We're just doing too much. Now, we also had assisting agencies, right? So we'll go to a crisis intervention call. They trained all of us officers to be crisis intervention trained. We do our best. And then when it's done, they don't need us. We walk away. We have a crisis team come speak to them. But they do offer, or they're making us do too much. I don't think that we need to be defunded, but I think they need to start to scale back and say, do we really need to go to a call where a person is suicidal and they want to hurt themselves? They're the only one in the house. They're the only one there. They're not hurting. They just want to kill themselves. Do we really need to show up to that? Because when we get there, now the person want to kill everybody because we have exacerbated the situation, and we have to shoot the man because he's a threat. And now we get fired, and now they want to throw you under the bus and say the police department should be eradicated. So
I can't agree with that. I've been on suicide attempts, and I can't agree with that, where I didn't literally talk somebody out of stabbing themselves, talk somebody out of jumping off the roof. Like, I've been there. So I can't agree with that. I can't say that. Why would the police be necessary for a situation like that?
But
I'm not saying you should go in gun-ho, but I'm not saying so if you get that call and let's say 5 of your officers get on scene, right? Are all 5 going to be able to handle the situation? No, but maybe one of them is. If you are a police officer, but you are seasoned in life, understand what I'm saying to you. The police officer is just an extension of who you are because you knew who you were before you became an officer, right? Many people come into this profession with no identity. They let this become their identity instead of letting it be an extension of who they are.
But why wouldn't we just send a paramedic or a fireman to a suicide? I get what you're saying, that, you know, we can talk people off the ledge, but we have other emergency responders that are way less visually threatening than we are. I would rather EMT come in with their little t-shirt and boots on than to see a guy, you know, with just gun, badge, taser, and all that on. I mean, if I was going through a mental crisis, I mean, we have this thing called a command presence. And when you're thinking about, you know, killing yourself, seeing a guy come in looking like an action figure ain't what you want to see. I get what you're saying, that you can have compassion, but we got to think about not for us. We got to think about the person on the other side that's in crisis. What's going to serve them better? Us or a paramedic or EMT or somebody that has a degree or skill in crisis intervention? You get what I'm saying? Like let's think about serving.
Let me jump in real quick. There are points and times where police officers need to be there, right? I'm just saying that we need to balance it out a little bit. I've talked people off a ledge. I rescued a girl off a bridge. I talked, a lady pulled a knife on me. She was right in front of me. I could have shot her dead, but I was able to talk to her because of my training. She dropped the knife. I took her to the crisis intervention center. But there are situations like my brother. My brother, sometimes if you make him mad, he can be a very hothead. And when you're a police officer and you show up to a scene, you have to have control. You can't just let a person just willy-nilly do whatever they want. You may have to take control. That may exacerbate the situation. I wouldn't want a cop to come to a situation where my brother is being frantic. I wouldn't even call the police, to be honest. I would try to talk him down and get a family member to do it. Because if he get there, the police don't know him. They don't know how crazy he get. And then sometimes he can calm down if you say the right things. They may get there, he say something crazy. They may take it as a threat. And now things are starting to escalate. So in certain cases, if we can manage it properly, I'm not saying that police shouldn't go to any suicidal calls, but if we can manage them properly, maybe we can have it to where people are not getting killed by us. Because I don't have a problem with police officers using deadly force against individuals. I don't have a problem. But nowadays in the public, man, if you kill a person and come to find out 20 days later that person had a mental disability and they had a propensity for violence, they're gonna rail police officers. So I just think we should balance it, not get rid of it, but we should have a fair balance.
Yeah, you know, to Brandon's larger point, you know, we have to think about when we put police officers in schools, what are we doing? Ultimately, we're putting police officers in a situation where they have to make decisions. And a lot of times the decision is easy to criminalize adolescent behavior rather than give that young person the mental health treatment that he needs to deal with whatever issue they have going on. When you send police to address street homelessness, and ultimately that communication is not working, when you get compliance, you deal with housing insecurities by arresting someone for illegally camping within the city limit. And this happens thousands of times throughout the country, right, where police are provided with the limited solutions to deal with these issues, right? So that's why we have to really think about, like to Brandon's point, what do we really want the police to respond to in moments of crisis?
So, Aaron, you wanted to speak? Go ahead, bro. I wanted to hear what you had to say.
If you're asking if we're expected too much out of us, I think the answer is yes and no. Some parts of the country don't get paid as well as other parts of the country. I'm fortunate to be in a state where law enforcement has a really good retirement pay and benefit system. But if you're paying me $12 an hour with no promise of retirement, no benefits, I can't ask that individual to go into harm's way. So pay should be commensurate to the type of officer quality that you want. You want top quality officers, you got to pay them top quality. The FBI crime stats indicate officers with college degrees have a less propensity to violate policy or go outside the scope of their authority. So speaking to what David said, empathy, as police officers, we have to make decisions. So I'm a sergeant of a patrol field force. And if we have a mental health call, someone that wants to commit suicide, of course we'll respond. The public has asked us to help. We're going to respond. But if we get there, we have to make a decision. If the guy doesn't want our help and he's an adult, we have to tell the family, I'm sorry, he doesn't want our help. And it's not illegal to want to kill yourself. And that's coming from a guy whose dad committed suicide. My dad he was a Vietnam vet. He had PTSD. And unfortunately, I got there too late and he committed suicide. But I was sure damn glad the police were there. It was in another city. The police were there. It was my peers. They knew exactly what to tell me to make me feel comforted. That day, if it wasn't for that pastor coming over to reconcile me, I don't know what would have happened. Fast forward a couple of years, reeling with my father's death, my mom was murdered on her porch. She was shot in the head by someone that tried to get into her house. And I'm an only child, so now I'm having to deal with all this stuff myself. But to David's point, life experience, I would want someone like me to show up, So I think it's important that when we recruit officers that are career-minded, that are going to be compensated for what they do. And we, instead of trying to find out if in their background that they're not going to be a troublemaker, we should find out in their background if they've got life experience. It's one thing to be street smart. It's another thing to be book smart. We need a good combination of both. And I think our background practices need to expand.
There you go. There you go. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, look how young we hire though. I mean, I was a proponent of, at my department before I left, I was like, we need to stop hiring these guys they come from being a cadet to going into the academy, and then they're on the street telling adults what to do. You know what I mean? You just turned 21. We're going to give you a badge, a gun, authority, a car, and tell you to go out here and make life decisions when you just came out of your mom's basement. So
I want to add this. I think that it's less about, I agree with you 100%. It's less about age and more about exposure and experience.
Yeah.
Because I joined the police department at 23 years old, but I had life experience, man. Some of my family members are on crack. Some of them are in prison. So I've had a variety of experiences that put me in a position that when I became a police officer, I could talk to anybody. I could talk to the crackhead because my auntie was a crackhead. So I could talk and be empathetic. I also went to college. So people who were more educated, I was able to communicate well with them.
I think what's critically important about what Brandon is talking about is we need to also look at who our elected officials appointed to be leading police departments, right? So those same lived experiences that Brandon and David and Aram are talking about are not really representative of the police chiefs and police commissioners that lead our law enforcement agencies. There's a study that's going to come out by Hamilton College where they can say police departments that are led by African-American, Hispanic police chiefs or police commissioners, per capita rate, fatality shootings are 70% lower than those departments that are led by Caucasian police chiefs or police commissioners. So that lived experience not only benefits officers that are coming through the rank and file, but it also needs to be represented in the positions of chiefs of police and police commissioners in this country, and it's not. It's very lacking.
So I want to just pivot to something else really quickly. For the group, by show of hands, who here has personally seen excessive force used on the job?
Yes.
Almost everyone. So keep your hand raised if you did something in that moment. In part one of this conversation between police officers, we asked cops from around the country to confront the bad apple narrative, whether or not law enforcement has a problem with institutional racism, and how cops feel about the calls to defund the police. In part two of this conversation, you will hear these same police officers discuss the effects of quotas within policing, their personal experiences with witnessing excessive force being used by colleagues, and if racism has motivated the disproportionate killing of black men by the police. For the group, by show of hands, who here has personally seen excessive force used on the job?
Yes.
Almost everyone. So keep your hand raised if you did something in that moment.
You're throwing that to me, Lee?
Interesting. Well, so what I wanted to throw to you, Joe, was if you think that police agencies have an excessive force issue. Almost everyone here has witnessed an instance of that. I'm just curious if that's a systemic issue within policing.
Well, I wouldn't say it's systemic, but when I have seen it, I interceded. I calmed the officer down, pulled him off, and took him out of the scene. Because that's our jobs. When I was training, I trained cops for 29 of my 31 years. I opened up all my training, regardless if it was unarmed combat, firearms, everything, is that I told the officers, if you're backing up an officer, you are their best friend, because we're human beings. Police officers are human beings. And when people are assaulting them, sometimes they get a little too much. And it's up to the officer assisting to to pull them out of that situation. In Minneapolis, had those officers done that for that officer, we may not be here today, to be honest. They just didn't do their jobs. There are 3 officers there that could have pulled him off of that. That, and that's what should have happened there. Period. There's no getting around that. There's no arguing with that. Every officer probably on this panel understands that, or they probably wouldn't be on this panel. But you have to intercede. Sometimes it doesn't happen that often, really, to be honest, but it can. Officers are humans, and they can get into difficult situations where they might lose a little control, and what they're about to do would be excessive. In Minneapolis, I had to turn down a case where a Minneapolis officer did something, and I said, I can't defend that. And
for
yes.
Raised our hand, right, who have seen it and who interceded in those moments. I'm curious if you could just walk me through, if you don't mind sharing, what you saw, what your thought process was like, and then how you moved through that moment, how you navigated it.
Well, and I just real quick to piggyback off of what Lewis just said, the research tells us that female police officers have much lower incidence of excessive force, uses of deadly force, and they're more effective in responding to things like domestic violence and sexual assault. But only 12% of American police officers are women. And we are woefully underrepresented in policing and in police leadership. So in my personal experiences, I had a number of occasions as a younger officer where force was used, and then, when the supervisor responded to the scene, I told the supervisor what had happened, and the officer who used that force denied their actions or underplayed them, and the supervisor failed to follow up on that investigation. As a sergeant, I had a couple of occasions where I had to physically pull my officers back in situations to prevent them from going overboard. And it is true that I think there are a lot of situations where emotions play into it, and there's adrenaline, and it's very difficult to control those in some cases. And I had one in particular where myself and my male partner responded to an elderly woman who had been assaulted, and her arm was broken. And so when my partner went to engage the suspect, he was very upset, and he was very unable to control himself in that situation.
But we are trained professionals, so those incidences should be outliers and not something that regularly happens. But the other issue is that we have to address is when we have officers that call their Internal Affairs Bureau and they talk and they report problematic behavior. In some cases, that could be regular use of excessive force on individuals, and they tell their Internal Affairs Bureaus that this is happening. Traditionally, what I have seen and experienced, along with many others, is that the department, in trying to protect its reputation, does everything possible to use its resources to discredit the whistleblower and not address the issue that the whistleblower is bringing to their attention. So it ingrains a situation where bad actors are protected by the department because protecting them protects the department's reputation up until the point where their actions escalate to the point where you have somebody killed and it becomes a public situation. And that's what we're seeing now from so many years of not taking these calls from whistleblowers seriously.
I think that, I'm sorry, Matt, you were going to say
I was going to say, how about we have a show of hands of who's had force used against them unnecessarily as a citizen growing up? It's a reality. It's something I experienced. So right off the jump from when I got this job, I mean, I'm a professional peacemaker. I just made it clear, like, and you guys pull this tune-up nonsense or to doing extra nonsense on an arrest, I'm going to be the first one to tell on you. I made that very, very clear because I know what it feels like. And I just said I would never be like that. And as far as the emotion into making an arrest, I've been in a gazillion fights and all kind of dangerous chases and situations. I'm a professional peacemaker. That's what makes you a professional, that you can control those emotions. That's what we do. That's the standard you should be held to. I don't buy the excuse, I was amped up and therefore I had to hit this guy or I had to do anything extra. You cuff him, you do what you need to do to cuff him, and then that's it. You're pro.
I just want to respond real quick. I just want to push back just a little bit on the race relations and sex relations to hiring individuals. I really did not like to hear that there is some type of a better adjustment to the police department because a person is Black in leadership. I mean, I think we need to talk through that a little bit because it just sounds racist to me. And also the sex aspect of it. All of the female police officers that I've dealt with have been the worst police officers. Now, there are some female police officers that are extremely professional, but they are the upper echelon. Some of these other female police officers, you can't go to a call where there's going to be some force used, or they're going to sit over there and you're going to have to fight out by yourself. That's my personal experience. So I don't like the fact that people saying, well, females are this way or Black officers are this way. I think we need to look down the middle and say, you either have it or you don't have it. You either are a leader with integrity. I don't care if you're white or Black or green, or you're an officer with integrity. I don't care if you're a male or a female, because I think these numbers get skewed because you put a Black police chief in place of an operating police department that's solid. I mean, how do you get those statistics? And now you are a positive statistic. Some of these females that I work with, they didn't have a lot of uses of force or any excessive use of force because they didn't use force. I mean, they would talk and get beat up, and then I would have to come and have to cover their butt. So not saying that that's all police officers. I highly doubt that Wendy is one of those officers. But I don't think that it's fair to just go off of sex or race. I think we need to look at individual officers.
I mean, listen, the reality is
something
that
right quick?
That's realistic, though, man. You can't get mad at realism, bro. That's real, though.
To say female officers are somehow using less force. I've been on a police star with female officers. That a lot of them are not able to fight back when you have suspects who are legit. I've been there. I've seen it. They get thrown around like rag dolls, and it takes men to come to the scene and use force. There was a few women who were bad to the bone. I'm not gonna lie. They'll fight with you, but there's a lot of females that they'll do the talking, but they're not gonna do no fighting, and you'll get killed messing with some of them. So I don't think it's fair to.
Yeah,
I do have to rebut.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I disagree. I have to say, listen, the reality is this, and the numbers don't lie. 90% of the police chiefs and police commissioners in this country are white men, largely, right? When we look at African-American police chiefs and police commissioners nationally, 4% is what represent those departments. And for Hispanics, it's 3%. We are not represented in the leadership, largely because we are not given the opportunity by the system to take on these responsibilities. And it's not that we can't do that.
Let me say this real quick. When I was in the academy, I had a white officer. He had already did like 20-something years, but he had transferred to Arizona and he came back to Ohio. So he had to go through like a small little Okada course. I'll never forget his words to me. He said, Dave, I love your enthusiasm. You're going to be an amazing person, period, with or without the uniform. He said, but know this, you're entering a white man's field of work. This is what a white man told me this. I didn't know what he was saying at the time until I got into the field. You know how many jobs and turned me down because because he got a little bit of a pass, his driving record ain't the best. Yep. Then you know how many opportunities I done lost, man? So I agree with what Mr. Molina said because, man, I done scratched and clawed. When I tell y'all what I'm about to tell y'all, y'all not gonna feel me. But I am one of the few that slipped through the cracks. And what I mean by that is that I shouldn't have been a cop. I don't even know how I made it. That guy was just looking out for me. I'm supposed to be here. You get what I'm saying? But I'm telling y'all, it ain't nothing gonna change until the people who are up top retire, move on, and people with a better mindset take that seat.
But that's not white.
Let me say this, Brandon.
It didn't have nothing to do with being white. They had something to do with bad leadership. And I'll say this, I was a Black police officer on a majority white and Hispanic police department. I was on a SWAT team. I was the spokesperson for the police department. So, I mean, people may have different experiences, but my personal experience is that it's not about black and white. Use your doggone talent. You pursue excellence.
You ain't got no talent.
But color does have something to do with it because as human beings, and I love everybody, but if I go to a bar and it's full of white people, and I see at the bar there's like 3 black people sitting out at the edge of the bar, just automatically I'm going to gravitate towards people who look like me. And the same thing in the community. You are way more comfortable with people who look like you because you automatically assume that you share life, things similar in life. You're like, oh, this person may have grown up like me. They look like me. That's just human nature. So if you have a Black police chief in a predominantly Black community, they're going to be a lot more comfortable with the police that they have because they look like you, and that's just facts. I'm not saying that
they do a lot of killing and they still do a lot of crime.
I agree, but I'm just saying we're just more comfortable with people who look like us. And that's just a fact.
I agree with that. But what I'm saying is that when you're going through the methodical sense of hiring police chiefs, hire the best person for the job. This race stuff is going to just make us worse.
But a lot of us don't get the opportunity to, because there aren't a lot of us. Our hiring pool is way smaller. The hiring pool for Black chiefs, Black lieutenants, Black captains, Black sergeants is going to be smaller, and same thing with
that are Black that are on the police department.
And this is what Louis is saying. This is what David is saying. Yeah. We have to start hiring more minorities so we have that opportunity.
More minorities need to start applying for the job.
Well, the thing is this, though. The reality is we have had a number of situations
to recruit Black folks, and Black people don't want to be cops.
It's beyond that. We have had situations where we have had minority, African-American, Latino women candidates for police chief and police commissioner jobs. And despite all their experiences, despite all their academic degrees, which to some had doctorates, and they were passed over by a male white with a high school diploma. And I'm not trying to be an elitist, but you can't explain that.
But the whites that are passed over, what about the white people who are passed over that are equally qualified and they get passed up by other whites?
There ain't that many of them.
No.
So somebody, the high school diploma guy got a job over other whites and Blacks who probably had degrees.
Let Lee talk. Go ahead.
I hear from Wendy to weigh in here. I know, obviously, regarding female officers and your experience, I'd just like to hear your response.
Well, I think what we're hearing here is part of the problem. Less than 1% of all police encounters and arrests involve even a need to use force. And so when we prioritize these masculine traits and the ability to fight in doing this job and ignore the fact that over 99% of the job is about communication, then we're creating a culture where what's valued is this need to fight people. And in 21 years, I had my share of fights and physical encounters, but a lot of them were because, a partner or another police officer, usually a male, escalated the situation. And then it led to a use of force that maybe didn't have to happen. So I think, dialing it back, if we pay attention to the research and the actual work that police officers do, and
fuck the research. Let's talk about facts and what's really going on, man. No offense, Wendy. I'm just being honest, man.
David, what's on your mind?
Like, man, listen, Aaron, I love his mindset. Luis, I love your mindset. Brandon, you making some great points because you just said something before you got cut off that not enough minorities are applying. They basically saying, fuck 12, fuck the police. You're absolutely correct. But for those who actually do try to take on the opportunity, we don't get it. When you speak about women, Wendy, let me tell you, I can only speak about my area. Women can't even pass the push-ups to get into the academy. Let's talk about that real quick. I would love to have a female officer. I've only worked with maybe 3 my entire career. All right. They wasn't high-headed. They could hold their own. I had one woman officer when I approached the door. A dog came running to the door and she took off. Was I upset about it? Yeah, I was upset because I would have had to fight this pit bull by myself. But I understood that, okay, where she may be weak, I got to be strong. All right. If I got to pick up the slack here and there, cool. If it's become a problem, then I'll type on it. That's different. But let's not act like, and let's not basically look past the fact that minorities, whether you Asian, whether you Black, whether whatever your nationality is, you are looked past. And yes, you are right, Brandon. There are some white people that are looked past as well, but we are completely outnumbered. I can name 5 suburbs right off the top of my head that don't even have a black cop, but they getting paid $87,000 a year, starting walking through the door as a rookie.
Let me shift the gauge just slightly and ask you guys this, right? David, I'm sorry to be another person to bring up a study, but in a 2019 one pointed out that with data collected from 2013 to 2018, that black men were about 2.5 times more likely to be shot and killed by a police officer than their white counterparts. Does law enforcement have an issue with racism?
I don't believe so. I don't think they have an issue with racism. Let me explain this too. I think people are forgetting the number of criminal behavior that's being interjected in these minority communities. African American people make up about 13% of the population. African American people, based on statistics, commit almost half of the murders in this country. That's why police are necessitated in these areas, and that's why they have more police interactions. When you look at police interactions, and I don't want to spend too much time explaining this, I'll pass it to somebody else, but just based on what I said, I don't think that there's racism on the police department or systemic racism against blacks.
So I will tell you, oh, go ahead, Louis.
I'll answer that this way, right? Because there's a lot of talk about there's significant police encounters. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that from the police officer's perspective, they believe that this individual has committed a crime or is about to commit a crime. But to be quite frank, when we take the NYPD, for example, from 2004 to 2012, they stopped over 4.4 million people under their Stop, Question, and Frisk program, of which 50% of the population in New York City is either black or brown, but they were over 80% of the people stopped. And of that group, 90% were not given a summons and they were not arrested, right? There was no objective reason to them being stopped. So the significant number of encounters that black and brown communities have with police doesn't only stem from crime, it stems from an arrest quota system, an arrest summons system. And that's what perpetuates policing careers and has perpetuated for a long time now.
CompStat is evil.
Yeah, so the police department through its system, right, and has this sort of indirect profiling mechanism that's driven by summons and arrest quotas that exists within the police department. And that has to be owned by the leadership of the department.
Stats are, I'm gonna tell you, most encounters, if in my opinion, that come and affect minorities are because of CompStat. Stats. You want stats. They say you don't have a quota, but everybody on this panel knows when it comes towards the end of the month, if you don't have a certain area of stats, you're going to hear something from your supervisor, and it affects you getting promoted. It affects your performance evaluations, and you see these guys like, okay, how many alcohol summonses do you have? Guess what? At the end of the month, you're going to go write alcohol summonses. Where are you going to go write these alcohol summonses at? At these liquor stores in mostly poor minority communities, and you're going to write a guy a summons who doesn't have a car. He's standing out there drinking out of a bag. He doesn't have a car. He ain't going to show up to court. Now you got a warrant for him of a guy he's going to go through the system, and he can't even afford a car or transportation to court, but you're going to expect him to pay for legal fees? Like, well, it's a bad circle, man.
I think you hit a good point. The dude is committing a crime. So
absolutely.
What I'm saying is that the police departments may be going into these areas because it's rich with criminal behavior. I just personally believe, and based on what I've seen, that it's less to do with race and more to do with social economic situations and people who are perpetuating crime. Let me not.
It's actually it's definitely a class thing. It's definitely
I think it's both. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think it's both, but I don't believe that we should criminalize alcoholism. We don't have on-demand mental health and physical health care in this country, but we have on-demand policing. So when we make the police the solution to a guy drinking a beer on the street, we are criminalizing alcohol dependency.
I agree with that. We need to manage the criminalization of some of these things, but at the end of the day, man, when are we going to talk about accountability? The reason why we all on this panel, and I'm not going to go to jail or get killed by anybody, because I'm not going to commit crimes. In this whole,
I think you can also be conditioned. If scenario-based training isn't fair, right? I remember going to the police academy And in most of the scenario-based training, the person who would have been the perpetrator was dressed in urban streetwear, right? Which is very normal to me. But if you're a kid who grew up in a suburban neighborhood where you weren't really exposed to that, and now you're training to become an inner city police officer, and you're conditioned to believe that urban dressed individuals, mostly people of color, is a dangerous signal, then you're going to have a heightened sense of awareness when you have these interactions with people from the inner city community. So I think training also plays into this part of conditioning what we label as threats in our communities when we're talking about police community interaction.
This is my last question to you all. Feel free to take it at your own pace. When do you think the public will begin to trust law enforcement again, where that trust has been broken?
Jeez.
I'll take this one.
When I'm dead.
Yeah. So back in the late 80s, early 90s, the government, the feds, realized that we needed to insert officers in the communities. Not the police stations, not to build police stations in the community, but substations. And that funding was labeled the COPS program, Community Oriented Policing.
Mm-hmm.
That built a lot of public trust. I mean, when you've had officers in a nondescript substation just assigned to the neighborhood, just to listen to problems, not do enforcement, but just wear soft clothes, be a part of the community, get to know everybody in the community. They felt comfortable with them. They felt like they had someone they can go to. They put a face to the agency, and they had our backs. But in 2008, when we entered this recession, the feds pulled the funding. So agencies had to curtail non-essential functions. So essentially, they had to stick to patrol, they had to stick to investigations, and the COPS program went out the wayside. So when we left the communities felt like we turned our backs on them. And when we turned our backs on them, essentially, they turned their backs on us. So if we want that support again, I think it's vital that we start bridging the gap. I think someone mentioned that before, by inserting officers right into the communities again. And that's unfortunately going to take some funding. So defunding is not going to help that cause.
No.
I think that it's going to be an uphill battle for a very long time. I think they're never going to get to this point because the media. I'm telling you guys, we can be doing great in the community. We can love the community. And then the media is going to highlight whatever's sexy. Let a white man kill a black man, and they're going to, especially during election time, they're going to push it out in the media, and it's going to cause everybody to hate us all over again. George Floyd shouldn't have been what it is. It shouldn't have been that way. We should have been railing the Minneapolis police officers that were involved in that, and it should have been done with. Instead, he has funerals. He got murals everywhere, and they got George Floyd laws. And I mean, it's the politicians in the media that's going to continue to cause us to have problem with the public.
Yeah. So for me, I think, one is, I think we have to reconcile that when it comes to how policing has been in this country, we really need sort of like a truth and reconciliation. We haven't had really a process. We've had a lot of situations, and we've had momentary protests, and then we sort of moved on without reconciling the past and how we got here. Now with Mr. Floyd's murder, we have seen a very global, sustainable protest that is causing a lot of response at the legislative and political level, as well as from the public. But I think to Lee's point about when do we get to a point where the community finally has some trust in the police, I think you're only going to be able to get that when they really feel that there's real procedural justice and the other accountability mechanisms that exist to have oversight over the police departments. And I'm not talking about the police departments themselves, leadership, but I'm talking about the district attorney's office. I'm talking about civilian complaint review boards for cities that don't have them. And I'm talking about federal consent decrees. Federal consent decrees in them of themselves do not change a culture, right? They look at metrics, they measure different things. And at some point, years later, the department moves on from them. But it doesn't really change the culture. And I feel that the culture of departments are defined by the leaderships of the departments. So until we get to a place where, if it's the federal government or state agencies, are going to start holding the leaders of these departments just as culpable and accountable as the bad actors, we're not really going to get change. I'm hoping that what comes of this is a real level of accountability that the public can trust and have confidence in. It may not always get the outcome that they want, but they'll feel that the process was fair.
And that's to what you were saying, Joe. One of the things I wanted to say was also the public has to get to a point where they have to realize that everything that they see is not a crime. Everything that they think is police brutality is not. a lot of times the media manipulates videos, the person manipulates videos. They can come and see me fighting a guy and me get the best of them. And they're like, and they hear people in the background going, oh, he's doing that for nothing. He's beating him for nothing, you know, and it gets disseminated without any filter. You know, there's no checks, there's no checks and balances, because the average person now is a media outlet. You with your camera is a media outlet. You can post it to your page and it'll get seen by everybody in the world. And there's nobody to fact check it or anything. And then mainstream media gets a hold of it and they have to be first out with the story. Now it just shows me beating the heck out of a guy. So the general public they have to, and I'm not saying they're not, they're very intelligent, but they have to realize that just because you see it and it looks like a crime, it's not. And just because you want somebody to go to jail doesn't mean they are. You know, cops have to go through the same justice system that they do. So when you scream that you want justice for somebody, you got to realize that this officer, he's got the right to justice too. He's got the right to the same criminal justice protections that every other citizen has. Just because we put on a uniform doesn't mean we stop being a citizen. So I think once we also reconcile that, people will start to realize like, hey, but on the other hand, I don't think they will ever reconcile that, because when you wear a uniform, you are representative of something that people really don't like, which is authority. So unfortunately, you know, we just have that stigma that's going to forever be attached to us. And this is exacerbated. So I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon.
I've always looked at it as I can only control what I can control. I just would encourage any young patrol out there. People are going to hate you, but you can control how you interact with them. Like you can get out there and love them back. I love the citizens. I cherish the citizens. On and off duty, I'm in the same neighborhoods as when I patrol as when I'm off. And I think that it just the grassroots. Each individual just showed that we're not bad guys, but like live it and don't just say it. When adversity comes, love back, because they're going to hate you no matter what. Some people, but you're going to win a lot if you just love back.
Wendy, David, anything?
Yeah, so I think that we might figure out how to build trust with communities when we figure out how to prevent these problems from happening again and again, these systemic failures. And I think there's an opportunity to learn from aviation. Aviation implemented a system a long time ago, and they were able to figure out when they had a failure in the system, how to identify it and prevent it throughout the system again. That's why flying an airplane is one of the safest forms of transportation. The medical field has adopted that system, and it's known as Sentinel event reviews. We could learn from other systems to figure out when we have failures, when we have poor outcomes, or when we have near misses, how to prevent them from happening again by spreading those lessons throughout our entire system. And it's got to be done in kind of a global way.
Folks, I think that's all the time I've really got with you today. Unless there's anything else you guys want to leave, I thank you for being here. I thank you for being so forthcoming with, your experiences, so generous with your time. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for your service, y'all.
Thank you. Be safe, everyone. Be safe.
Be safe.
Be safe.
Thanks,
Be
guys.
safe out there.